Okay, let's go ahead and get started on the notes. So today we're going to talk about two-way tables. And this is a little bit different than what we have been talking about this whole unit. It's still statistics, it's still a set of data, but we are not going to graph. We're really just looking at a table of data and then answering questions and finding percentages and things like that. So you'll definitely want a calculator out today to help you with your percentages. Okay, let's go ahead and just start off pretty easy here and just make sure we can understand how this table works. So my question is, how many 10th graders have a pet? So two-way tables mean I'm going to be kind of giving multiple types of data points. So in other words, we are asking maybe two questions, or we have two different categories. That might be another way to kind of explain this. So notice how I have pets versus no pets, two different categories that you can fall under. And I also have 9th graders versus 10th graders. So in this table here, I have lots going on. I have 9th graders that could have a pet and not a pet. I could also have 10th graders that do have a pet and not have a pet. So really there's 4 different categories that I could fall under, okay? And so how we read this is I want to say how many 10th graders have a pet. Well, I want to identify the 10th grade column, which is this one right here. And I want to identify the pet column. And so where do they meet? 67. So 67 10th graders have a pet, all right? And so that would be my answer. So that's all we're doing when I'm working with a two-way table is I am looking at, each row, each column, finding where they meet and intersect, okay? But of course, it can get a little bit more complicated than that. We're not going to be always given such a black and white question. Maybe the question that we're given is something like this: what percent of 9th graders do not have a pet? Remember, percent is not just answering the question, but saying what the answer to that question is over my total, okay? So I need to answer the question first. How many 9th graders do not have a pet? That's step 1. It's 9th graders who do not have a pet. So if I go back up here, we can say, all right, here's my 9th grade column or row. Here's my pets column. Where do they intersect? Right here. So 9th graders who do not have a pet, 22. I'm making this video on Thursday after school, so my brain's a little fried right now. Okay, so we can see that 9th graders who do not have a pet is 22. So that's step 1, is answering the question the same way that we did before. But that is not my answer. It's asking what percent. So this is going to be over my total. So the question is, total of what though? Total who don't have pets? Total 9th graders? Well, it's how the question is asked. It's asking what percent of 9th graders. If it asks what percent of people who do not have a pet are in 9th grade, that would be a different question. It's asking what percent of 9th graders, okay? So that means I need to look at my 9th grade total. It's asking me what percent of 9th graders. So there are 72 9th graders. So 22 divided by 72. When you type that in, you get 0.306. You could round that if you want. You don't have to. You can just move the decimal place 2 times. I'm fine with that. Move that 2 times. So this is 30.6%. Okay? So again, when I'm asked for percent, I need to answer the question first. That's what I did. Got 22. I then need to say percent of who. That's my total. That's what goes on the bottom. We divide, got 0.306, convert that to its percent. We have done lots of work with converting to percent, so I'm not going to be too worried about that. Okay, the third type of question that you may see is asking, what is the relative frequency? So relative frequency, this is really just saying ratio. So relative frequency is the ratio. It's asking what is the ratio of students who prefer pizza to teachers who prefer pizza. Okay, so we're comparing students to teachers who prefer pizza. Remember, ratios are fractions. Ratios are fractions. Okay, and so I want to say on top, again, look at the order. It says, what is the relative frequency or ratio of students who prefer pizza? So that's going to be on top. So we could say students pizza is going to be on the top over teachers who prefer pizza. So that is the second thing that's listed. Therefore, that is on the bottom of my fraction. So students who prefer pizza is on the top. 2, teachers who prefer pizza, that is on the bottom. So now we need to look at my table here. So I can see students, that's this row right here, who prefer pizza, which is right here. Okay, so pizza and the students, that would be my my work here, okay? So 335. So that's just very easy to identify, right? I have students, I have the pizza column right here. Okay, same thing. Now I need to go to the teachers who prefer pizza. 16. So 335 over 16. Now you can reduce. On the homework, you will see that there is the non-reduced fraction and the reduced fraction as a potential answer choice. In this case, we cannot reduce. There is no number that goes into both 335 and 16. But if you get to the homework, you don't have to reduce it. You will see that there's both the reduced and non-reduced answer on the homework. So that's it. If it's asked for the relative frequency, you find the ratio, 335 to 16. Okay, so let's try that one more time. What is the relative frequency, again, or the ratio of students who prefer chicken nuggets to the total number of students surveyed? So I can first, on the top, write students who prefer chicken nuggets. That's the first list that I'm given, our first item that I'm given. So that's going to go on the top. So we're going to say students who like the chicken nuggets to total number of students surveyed. So total students. So that's my ratio. So first thing that's mentioned goes on the top. Second thing that's mentioned goes on the bottom. So let's calculate now how many were students who like chicken nuggets. So here's the student column. Here's the chicken nugget column. So there would be my answer. Students who like chicken nuggets, 257. So that would be the answer to the top part. Versus total students. Now this is a two-way table that did not tally up my totals over here like how we had earlier. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So if they don't, that means I need to add up every single number in this column, okay? If I'm not given a total at the end, if I don't have that cell right here, then I got to find that information myself. So we can add up 335 plus 257 plus 110 plus 25. So that's my entire student row. This entire row is going to be added together to find my total student count. So once we type that in, you should get 727. And that one cannot be reduced. But again, on the homework, there's reduced and non-reduced. So this is a good stopping point to give you your bonus. Tell me, since we're so close to summer break, if you're going anywhere fun this summer on a vacation. And if you're not, that's okay. Tell me what your dream vacation would be if you could choose, okay? Put that in the comments of this video, the private comments. All right, so last one, we'll do this together. So let's go ahead and answer more percent questions here. So number 1 is asking, what percent of middle school students have a cell phone? So we first need to answer the question. Even though it's asking for percent, we definitely need to know the number. So percent of middle school students who have a cell phone. So that would be this number right here, 655. Middle school students who have a cell phone, that's 655. So that's going to go on the top part of my fraction. I need to divide that by total middle school students. Why am I totaling up the middle school students? I cannot say that word for some reason. Middle school students, well, that's because it's asking what percent of, right? Whatever it's saying, percent of what? That's my total. Again, I'm not given the total right here, right? I don't have that row or that column at the end there for a total. So I have to do that work myself. So I can add up, the total would be 655 plus 167. That's how many students I have. And so that gives me 822. And so when we type that into our calculator, I get 0.797 rounding, which when I move the decimal point, I get 79.7%. Okay? So again, we move that decimal place 2 times, and that's it. So percents are pretty easy. You want to take your answer to the question, divide by the total. divide. I now get my decimal and I can convert that to a percent. Let's try that one more time. So this one's asking what percent of students surveyed do not have a cell phone, okay? What percent of students surveyed do not have a cell phone? So I really like this question, okay? So it doesn't specify elementary, middle school, high school. It says what percent of students, meaning everyone, right? Meaning every elementary, middle, and high school, okay? So I want to first tally up how many do not have a cell phone. So that means this entire column would answer that question, right? How many out of all my students, elementary, middle, and high school, do not have a cell phone? Well, that's this column right here. So we would say 310 plus 167 plus 27. That's how many who do not have a cell phone, right? All of these do not have a cell phone, right, of students. So when I type that in, I get 504. 504 do not have a cell phone. We're going to divide that by students. It asks what percent of students. So all of them. And so this is a kind of an interesting question because if it's asking for all of my students, cell phone or not, I'm now really adding up every single number in this chart. So I like this example because we're looking, not just at a specific column or row, but the entire chart now. And so I can add up 200, 655, 1, 2, all of these numbers, right? Out of all of my students, these are all my students, middle, elementary, and high school, you either have a cell phone or you don't. That you have two choices. You either have one or you do not. So these are all of the students, how many I have. So I want to add up all those numbers. So again, that's going to be 200 plus 655 plus 1233 plus 310 plus 167 plus 27. That's all of my students on the bottom. So when we type that in, you should get 2582. And so there is my percentage. So we can divide 504 divided by 2,582. I get 0.195 when I round. So that is the same thing as 19.5% once I move that decimal place 2 times. So that one is kind of a tough one. There will be one like that on the homework where you want to look overall, big idea here. Sometimes you're adding up every single number in that chart. Okay, then let's look at what is the relative frequency of students who have cell phones? Okay, relative frequency of students who have cell phones. So let's go ahead and look at this. So we want to, and I think this question could be a little bit more specific as well, and I think it will be on the homework. What is the relative frequency of students who have cell phones? Well, we first need to answer the question, who have cell phones? How many have cell phones? So that's entirely this row or this column right here, right? So that's all of these numbers, right? It doesn't just say what is the relative frequency of middle school students. It just says of students. So I'm looking at all of my students in all schools. 200 plus 655 plus 1233. So that's going to answer my question here. So 200 plus 655 plus 1223 is, when we type that in, 2078. So if your question is kind of like this, where it just says, what is the relative frequency of students who have cell phones? Well, the other choice has to be to students who don't have cell phones, right? It's one or the other. It's you either have a cell phone or you don't. So we're going to say we want a ratio or a fraction that compares the students who do have cell phones, which we just tallied up, 2,078, to my total students here. So we could say we've already done that total, 2582. On this question should be a little bit more specific. I will make sure that the homework is like that, actually, because now I'm kind of questioning it. So the relative frequency of students who have cell phones to total students really should be what this question is saying. Okay, that's what this question should be. So I'll make sure on the homework it says that. I think that might have been a typo or something. Okay, so then number 4, this one looks a little bit better. What is the relative frequency of elementary students to total students surveyed, right? So this, we have the two comparison, right? How many elementary students do we have to how many total students do we have? So let's go ahead and answer the first part. So elementary students that I have is this entire row right here, right? This is the elementary row. So how many do I have? Well, I have 200 plus 310. 200 plus 310. So that's how many elementary students I have. So 200 plus 310, that gives me 510 over total students surveyed. Again, that number is the same number that I've been using each time here, 2582. So you'll also notice that on the homework, that if you find the total once, you shouldn't have to find it again. A lot of your numbers are going to be reused over and over and over. And also, if you notice, both of these are even, so we could divide them by 2 and reduce. So this second fraction reduces to 255 over 1291. Again, that's not necessary on the homework. It will have both of them. This top one could reduce to 1039 or 1291. Okay, so that's it for the notes. So again, you really want to pay attention to, is it asking for a percent or is it asking for a relative frequency? Okay, frequencies are those fractions comparing your two things. Percents are dividing those two things and turning them into decimals and then turning that into a percent. Okay, whereas relative frequency, I get to just stop there. I don't have to divide and keep going. Okay, so relative frequency is actually a little bit easier, but it's all comparisons, right? Notice how every single one of my answers is a fraction. Percents, I just take it a step further. And I will double check that the homework looks good, okay? So you want to be working on that now. There is like a coloring page with it. That is bonus. You have to do the worksheet. That's your homework. But if you want bonus in the homework category, you can then find your answers that match up with the coloring page and color in whatever color the question tells you to, okay? If you have any questions, email me. Again, we also have our homework quiz on Monday, so make sure you bring your notes for Monday.